Hey folks, Brennan from Bluelight here. Now, if you are a constable in Scotland, I know that if you're preparing for your sergeant's board, you're going to have to do the following. So you've got an operational scenario ahead of you, a briefing that you've got to do, and also some kind of HR issue that you're going to have to discuss or maybe even role play. So one of the members of the Bluelight in-service development cadre, that's a special Facebook group that's got almost 3,000 members now in less than 2 months, which is just incredible, has posted that they're struggling a little bit to work out where to start in all of their preparation. So in this video, I thought I'd give you a few hints and tips based on some big mistakes that I've made in the past as an operational inspector in Greater Manchester Police. Now, if you're not preparing for your sergeant's exam and you're just in the police recruitment process, you might find this interesting anyway, because this will most definitely link in with the Stage 3 online assessment centre that you might have to do. It will also link in with any questions that you may get which are scenario based, especially if you have to do some kind of presentation or sort of forward-facing questions where they'll give you a scenario and say, how would you imagine that you'd deal with this if you're successful as a police officer? So I'm going to give you some ideas here based on a model that you won't find anywhere else actually, because I came up with it. So there. So I put at the top there, response options to a community problem or issues. Now in other videos I talk about a staged process that you go through as part of a problem-solving methodology that links in with the SARA methodology of scanning, analysis, response and assessment and monitoring. I'm just going to focus with the response part here. Otherwise the video will be just far too long. And it's just to give you some ideas. And I think this will allow you to shine a little bit beyond just coming up with the obvious operational answers. So if you're going to be a really effective sergeant and you're going to be able to respond to community issues and nip them in the bud so that they don't occur again, then you're going to have to do more than enforcement. I've seen this before, just utilising enforcement options and expecting that the problem's going to go away. It's not. I don't know of any problem, any kind of crime problem, any kind of antisocial problem that I've come across in 3 decades that has been solved by enforcement alone. I've seen lots of forces and divisions and boroughs doing lots of enforcement week in, week out at the same problem. And was it Albert Einstein who said that that's the definition of madness, doing the same thing today that you did yesterday and expecting a different result? Am I right? Was it Albert Einstein? Anyway, back to the model. So enforcement is part of this. And perhaps, you know, it might be good to come up with a context just so you can sort of picture what this may be. And this will be useful for you if you're doing your online assessment centre for the police recruitment process, especially the Stage 3 briefing. So I'm going to give you a scenario that involves drug dealing and people who are vulnerable in the community, the homeless community, quite a large homeless community in this particular city or town. And a lot of them are extremely vulnerable with mental health issues, drug and alcohol addiction issues, and a lot of them have been homeless for a long time and find it very, very difficult to access any kind of hostile support like Salvation Army or any of the other charities because of behaviour issues. And a lot of them are addicted to controlled drugs, not all of them, but a lot of them are. And that is as a result of them finding it really easy to access a supply of controlled drugs, because individuals who are part of an organised crime syndicate, I'm not saying the whole OCG would focus on a group of homeless people, but there are individuals who are part of that OCG. I always give them ranks. So let's say there'll be sort of corporals, won't they? And the foot soldiers are the ones who are dealing to these individuals. So in terms of their behaviour out on the street, and this is something I've dealt with, by the way, you know, years ago, a long, long time ago, I had a group of about 12 persistent homeless individuals, and the council and community groups wanted them ASBOing. Do you remember ASBOs? Wanted them ASBOing out of the town centre. This was in Sale. And it just struck me that if we just move the problem out of Sale, we move it somewhere else, and we're just shuffling things around. And the referrals that were going in, they were being referred to different agencies, but frankly, we were just sort of passing them from one agency to another. And they weren't responding anyway, because half of them didn't know what time of day it was, or even what day it was. And they weren't responding to any kind of appointments that were made. And we had big issues with mental health team not wanting to see them because they said that they're probably under the influence of drugs and alcohol, and the drug and alcohol action team wouldn't see them because they said probably mental health issues. You see how we can just go round and round in circles. Anyway, one of the things that had to do is draw all of that group together, because a big part of what we did was about prevention and trust building in the community, advocacy in the community, and communication. That's what TEPAC stands for. So with any enforcement, I always try to make sure that we did some trust building, prevention, advocacy, and communication at the same time. More about what that means in a moment, each one of those means. And it's not like a list that you do trust building first and then enforcement second and prevention third, and no, it doesn't work like that. This is just things to consider whilst you're doing the response part of problem solving. So the enforcement angle that we decided to take was drawing a line in the sand, because certain behaviour wasn't going to be acceptable on my watch or anyone else's watch. But one of the things we wanted to do once we brought them into custody, if they were arrested for any offences, in general they were public order offences, drunk and disorderly, drugs related offences, or theft, stealing from shops to get the money for their fix, stealing from sheds and gardens, and basically anything that wasn't nailed down would get stolen. So there was some enforcement, but the angle that we wanted to take was one that is actually discussed today. The Society for Evidence-Based Policing talks about this having a lot of value in terms of further prevention, is to use that arrest as a lever to get people into some kind of treatment or some kind of support. So the aim was not to put them in front of the courts, or if we were going to put them in front of the courts, it's with recommendations to the CPS that, and we've already made these arrangements, that we're quite happy from a police perspective and from a community impact perspective as well, to have these individuals put into a process of treatment and support. But they'd have to be up for it. You know, if they weren't, one or two of them just weren't up for it, hey, they just got charged, and there's nothing we could do about that. But what I wanted to do is to use the arrest as a lever, to try and have some leverage to get them into some kind of system to support the issues that they had. And each individual had very, very unique their own issues. So a big part of what we did was prevention, and I could subject of another video, you know, how to pull together a partnership around a place and around a singular issue as opposed to around everyone's role, is subject of a completely different video. But that's a prevention side. So the enforcement linked in with the prevention. The trust building was something that we did with the homeless community. I had an awesome officer called Heather who worked brilliantly with a housing officer called Alison. Of course, housing officers have got a part to play in this because it's their reason for being, isn't it? To put roofs over people's heads. And so they would spend a lot of time going out in the morning. This is when they were at least drunk, about 7 o'clock in the morning, 7:30 in the morning, when they're just waking up out of their whatever homeless tent or lean-to or whatever it was that they created to sleep in. And I've got to say, I wouldn't have wanted to be in their shoes for anything. But they went out and did the trust building. They also did some arrests at times. Heather did some of the arrests, but they kind of trusted her. And it took a long time to build up that trust, And the way they did it was focusing very much on wanting to support, wanting to help, wanting to enable. You know, that was the approach all the time. Wanting to support, wanting to help, wanting to enable. So there's also some trust building that needed to be done with the community as well, because these were community members who wanted them just ASBOing out of town. So they wanted to see some results. And so there was a lot of discussions with community members, with local councillors, to basically try and get to see the world through the lens of those people who were homeless, and to appeal to their better nature, really, in terms of, you know, wanting to help someone's brother or sister, someone's mother or father, or someone's son or daughter. And there's lots of conversations that went along the lines of, I'd like you to imagine, if you can, that you were in a position like that. You know, everyone's only about 6 pay slips away from being homeless. And so there's lots of conversations like that, quite deep conversations really, but to try and get people in the community to see what it'd be like to live as a homeless person through the lens of that homeless person. What would it be like? What would it feel like? We got a bit emotional at times. Interestingly, what happened a bit further down the line is that the attitude changed, and once they saw those individuals who were homeless honestly trying to do something about the problems in their life, then they started reaching out to them a little bit, which I thought was quite interesting. There's one of them was invited to a Christmas dinner by someone who wanted a Asbowing just 6 months previously. So a really interesting dynamic there, but a lot of trust building, a lot of trying to build bridges between different parts of the community. The advocacy, this is really important, this. So what we were looking to do, when I say advocacy, is you're being an advocate for different parts of that community. So the Sale More Community Partnership, they reached out and said that they'd like to provide some support to help them with things like CVs or any skills that they might need to develop to make them job ready. And of course that needed some funding. So this is where I stepped in as a neighbourhood inspector, and you could step in as a sergeant, because you're going for your sergeant's board, remember, because I've got access to funding. Actually, I can't draw that funding down, but I know where it is. I know how to access it. I'm familiar with the world of the Community Safety Partnership. I know what the funding streams are. I know which local councillors to speak to. So when you look at the theory of social capital theory, I was acting as a bridge. I was like connecting people. So I was connecting the Sale More Community Partnership with the likes of the Trafford Housing Trust, who were already connected with them anyway, but I was acting as an advocate, saying that actually this is really important. This is something I feel that we should support as a community safety partnership. And of course, as a police officer, that level of advocacy holds a lot of weight. So that's really important, that, because it demonstrates to those people who you're supporting and trying to help that you actually mean it. You know, you mean it more than just words on a piece of paper. You're publicly being an advocate for those people who need that support and enabling them to get the support they need, either the funding or the resources, whatever that might be. Another example I can give you is some young people who were dealt with in respect of antisocial behaviour and low-level crime, whatever you choose to. Low-level crime there was stealing cars and lots of twacking going on. Low-level arson, if you can have such a thing. Anyway, lots of other similar types of crimes, but not like they're not graduated to robberies or aggravated burglaries or anything like that yet. Just yet. Some of them did eventually, but not yet, just yet. So some of them were engaged in enforcement, but at the same time we wanted to get them into a system which would enable them to actually focus on the things that they wanted to do in life. So what is it you like to do? It turned out they liked this grungy, garagey music or rap music. So let's focus their energies on that as a community safety partnership. But simply saying, yes, go and focus on that. They'd say, well, we haven't got any money, we haven't got any resources. And that's again when we go to the likes of the community partnerships. In this case, it's a Sale More Community Partnership. But that, of course, needed money. So again, I'm acting as an advocate, tapping up different sources, and eventually we pulled together £8,000 to create a youth bank, which was administered by the Sale More Community Partnership. But they could bid into that money and spend it as they saw fit. You know, as their money to decide on how they're going to spend it. They did a trip to Blackpool. Now, some of you might be thinking, public money is not for that. But some of these kids had they'd never seen the sea before, and they'd never actually been on a trip with anyone. So this was a big deal for some of them, and that was as a catalyst to get them engaged with other people within the partnership. So All of these sort of things have worth if you're looking at the long game. And they bought a load of music equipment, and they invited me to one of their little concerts. I've got to say, the music was awful. It was dreadful. But I love the way they'd come together. And they saw me as an advocate for them because they knew that myself and others had sought the funding for them. So hopefully that's explaining the advocacy part. Now, the last part, communication. One of the things that corporate comms like to do is to publish corporate comms type stories. But honestly, you know, when they go out on social media, how many people actually read them? Because they're normally just things like appeals and news updates and some bland press release that, you know, it's not really ticking the boxes, and people skip over it. Because remember, with communication, that's the only thing that you're competing with. Someone's scrolling with a thumb on their phone. You've got to get them to stop the thumb. That's all you've got to do, get them to stop the thumb and read whatever it is on that social media stream. So whether it's Twitter, WhatsApp, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, local newspaper, whatever it might be, you've got to get them to stop the thumb. Now, my guess is, unless it's a really exciting corporate comms team, that most of the stuff that comes out from them, people just do this and they're just scrolling past it because it's just not that interesting. So one of the things in terms of comms that I wanted to do with anything that we did is to tell a story. And compelling stories that people read generally don't come from the police. They might come from commentators around the police, but, and you know, prove me wrong, you know, but I think, you know, just in my experience, most corporate comms channels are pretty boring. Most news press releases that they put out there, I know this because I've spoken to the journalists that just go, a bit boring, we kind of stick them on page 6 just to, you know, just because they've asked us to. What we really want is we want page 1 or page 2 with pictures. And so we'd provide the press with pictures, we'd provide them with a ready-made story, we'd provide them with quotes from people who are involved, and gave them the freedom to just come and watch what we're doing and to take pictures and film what we're doing sometimes. And we did the same thing with community members, gave them the freedom to come and watch what we're doing as community observers, take pictures, film what we're doing, and stick it out there on Twitter and Facebook. TikTok didn't exist back then, and Instagram didn't exist back then. But we wanted the stories to be told through the lens of a member of the community who's trusted. Now, eventually we become trusted, but to start with, they're trusted more than us. So you always want to get your news story, don't you, from a trusted news source. So that's what we wanted to do. We wanted the stories of what we're doing to be told through the lens of a trusted source within the community. So with that communication now, we're looking at several different spokes of a wagon wheel, if you like. Think about social media as like a wagon wheel of social media. You've got these spokes going out, haven't you, to the wheel. So you're trying to get your message out through as many different sources as possible. So Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, WhatsApp, local press, everything you possibly can, because don't think for one moment that everyone's just sat there thinking, I just need an update off the neighbourhood team or the police. No, like I said, you've got to stop the thumb. And we're competing for every moment of people's lives at this moment in time. And so just getting their attention for 30 seconds is really valuable. So here we go, folks. TEPAC. In everything we do, and I can give you more examples if you just ask in the comments. I can give you some more examples. If you've got any questions, let me know as well. In everything we do, it's not just enforcement. We're doing some prevention, trust building, advocacy, and communication. There you go, folks. It's part of a response for the SARA model. And I know I've broken that down into all sorts of different steps in other videos. There you go, response. And there's a rocket at the bottom, in case you're thinking, the little boy drew that, he's 9. Elon Musk's rocket, and that's a police helicopter, and those are Teslas taking the astronauts to the rocket, just in case you're wondering. All right, folks, well, listen, if you want to be part of the conversation, then there's the Facebook groups below for serving officers and for potential recruits. Please do come and join them. And I'm not going to say your name, I've got it written down here, but I hope that's useful for you. It's going to help get you thinking about how to approach operational scenarios that are very much bedded within the community. And for me, that's everything. You know, can you think of any incident that's not connected with the community? I can't. Everything that the police deal with You know, it's the heart of everything, whether it be counter-terrorism, international money laundering. It's all happening in a community. So why not the community that you are responsible for? All right, folks, I shall catch up with you soon. Bye-bye for now.